A very warm welcome and a good day to one and all to yet another session of planning on events. Today we shall be discussing on our topic of dealing with vendors. A bit about myself, Sheetal Gupta, an assistant professor at the AISSMS College of Hotel Management and Catering Technology based in Pune. My email address is mentioned here. For any further queries, kindly do get in touch and I shall be happy to revert back to each of you. So without further ado, let us begin discussing on dealing with vendors and suppliers. Our topic today on dealing with vendors would include three subsections. We will speak about types of vendors, selection and choosing the correct vendors and suppliers, and of course, lastly, but most importantly, the vendor contracts and the supplier contracts. At the heart of any successful event planner's business is a great team of reliable vendors and suppliers. As a special event planner, you will develop a very close relationship with a team of independent contractors known as your vendors. These team of people supply everything and anything from flowers to cakes to special effects to the lighting, fog machines, as well as even to the food and beverage for an event. No event can function without the use of vendors. This is an area that can get very complicated for the individual planning the event who has absolutely no experience or no contracts. Whom should you hire to cater? How do you know that the cake will be delivered on time and to the right location? What happens if your vendor is unreliable? So it cannot be overstated that your event will be marred by even one bad vendor. Just as a single bad apple ruins the entire lot, one bad vendor may leave a very bad image in your client's mind about your event as a whole. Perhaps the florist arrived with wilted and faded centerpieces. Or the singer you hired sounded more like a howling dog than a professional singer. It's hard to erase these images from the minds of your guests and clients and the attendees. Even if a mistake is a vendor's fault, the entire mishap will reflect on you because you are managing the event. That's what makes researching the correct vendors so vital. To find the top-rate vendors, you must do your due diligence and select the right vendor for your event. No event can function without the use of vendors. This is an area that gets very complicated as we discussed. Hence, let us now discuss about types of vendors. There are a huge number of vendors, suppliers, and contractors who can either make your event or break it. To find the right vendor for your event, you should do your due diligence first. The key types of vendors that event organizers usually hire are your art directors who handle your designing, your computer imaging, etc. The caterer or the bartender who serves the food and beverage. The calligrapher who handles the lettering or the invitations and signage boards. The decorators who provide the entire decor. The florist who provides the floral arrangements. The graphic artist who designs and executes the event posters, the photographer and videographer who actually photograph and record the event, the performers who provide entertainment, the transportation and the parking personnel who are your drivers and parking valets, the bakers and the pastry chefs, even the destination management companies. Choosing or selecting the correct vendor and supplier. When it comes to finding the best vendor, the best idea, successful event planners say, best thing is to ask questions and listen carefully to the answers, as asking other event planners and clients about their experiences in the past with those vendors. The names of the best and the worst vendors will be mentioned again and again. Keep in mind all of those in a list that are recommended and those that have bad reputations. With these lists in hand, start researching the vendors on your A list, recording the important functions and the following information: the vendor's name and address, his area of service and specialization, his prices, his lead time required, his payment and cancellation policies, including his refund policies, the discounts he offers, the special items, his insurance coverage, and of course, even the types of licenses and permits that he holds. This vendor file is extremely important because it can save you hours of research time and have all the relevant information at your fingertips so that you're able to conduct your search on the vendor and narrow down to the correct vendor for your event. Before you hire a vendor for the first time, find out all you can about his company's history. Ask him for letters of reference too, or better still, ask if you can attend an event at which he is providing a service. Once you're satisfied, make sure you have a document or a contract indicating what exactly the company will do at your event. The vendor proposals should include the complete description of service, the description of his equipments, listing of any additional services that he will provide, describing the costs and the payment terms, scheduling all the information, proof of insurance, bonding, and other risk management practices, as well as the list of his requirements, namely water, electricity, at your event. Now we come to discuss our last important point, that is your vendor or supplier contracts. The post-process of selecting the vendor and supplier is of utmost importance as well. Managing the vendor and keeping an eye on his errands consumes oodles of time and energy. Even a single bad fish can spoil the entire pond. Similarly, a single bad vendor can create a queue of misconceptions and a final faulty image for the event planner. A vendor agreement is a business contract by which you and another party agree to an exchange of goods and services for compensation for specific amounts and prices. The agreement sets the conditions and details under which this exchange will take place and can either be on a one-time basis or on a regular contract. They tend to be used for events such as weddings or trade shows. One benefit of having an agreement is that when you are the host of the event or the vendor, You can set conditions by which the vendor can operate. That helps you maintain control and, of course, prevent unwanted chaos. The document also holds up in a case of court of law and helps lay down the line regarding payment terms or unauthorized access. You can also specify the conditions on what would happen if neither the vendor nor the purchaser can honor their side of the agreement. For example, if a caterer fails to deliver a wedding cake on time, for example, you can demand a different compensation just rather than a new cake. Regardless of whether your vendor is asking you to sign a standard contract or you have some negotiating room, here are some of the important things that should be in your contract. That way, the fine print can protect you and keep your business running smooth. Allow me now to show you a short video on how to deal with your vendors and suppliers. Please pay attention to this video, and I hope it clarifies your mind on how to deal with vendors and suppliers. Let's watch this video.
Hi, it's Simon Reynolds here, and this week I want to talk about how you as an entrepreneur can deal better with your suppliers. So as your company grows, you'll get more and more suppliers, more and more companies that are working with your company to help you deliver your product. Now, therefore, as the bigger your company gets, the more it matters how you handle the relationship with suppliers. So let me just give you a few ideas on how to make that relationship excellent. Idea number one, make sure you take each of your suppliers to lunch once a year. It's only 90 minutes or 2 hours at max, but it makes a huge difference to the quality of your relationship. I'm always amazed how when you, in a business environment, when you go to lunch with someone, often the relationship improves. And if you do this just once a year, what you'll often find is the price that they offer you may not be as high. The quality of their service often goes up, and the speed at which they deliver it to you often improves as well. Just because they think you're a good guy, they put you in a different category to people where they're just working with them for money. It's a small thing to do to take someone to lunch, but it often makes a huge difference. Idea number two, make sure you ask your suppliers for a better price at least once a year. So make sure that even though you've got a good relationship with them, that you're always testing them and always letting them know that you can't be taken advantage of. Just because you're a nice person, just because they've had the business for a few years, doesn't mean that you're not always thinking about price. See, I've found that often suppliers will charge what they think they can get away with. And sometimes the new client gets a better price than the old client. Now, if you're the old client, you've got to stop that. You've got to make sure that in your case, they look at price constantly with you. And you want to at least do an annual review of prices to make sure that they're delivering at the right price. And you must urge them constantly to lower their prices when possible. By the same token, of course, you don't want those prices so low that you're now a client that they don't care about. It's a balance, but it's worth at least focusing on. Idea number three for how to improve relationships with suppliers is make sure that you look for alternatives every 6 months. Who's to say that suppliers still the best? The markets are moving very, very rapidly. So if you have had a supplier for a year, 2 years, 3 years, you want to make sure that there aren't new players that have come in with better offerings, better prices, better teams, better speed, etc. And the only way you can do that is to take an hour or two every 6 months, put it in your diary, and start getting online, looking at competitors, making a few phone calls, and making sure that your suppliers really are the best of breed in every area that you deal with them with. And finally, brief your team on how best to talk to suppliers. So what often happens as your business grows is you're no longer the one dealing necessarily all the time with the suppliers. So you want to make sure that you create a checklist for how your staff are to deal with suppliers. For instance, what timelines do they give suppliers? What timelines do they insist upon getting back? How soon do they want the result to come back from the supplier? What's the briefing form? Can you standardize that? What other things could you list on a checklist to make sure that whenever your staff deal with any of your suppliers, they do so in the most efficient and effective way? You know, it probably only takes you half an hour to create a very, very good briefing form or checklist for all your supplier relationships, and it will make a huge difference in the quality of what you get and the price you get it at. So there's some great tips on how to deal with suppliers. As your business grows, dealing with suppliers well will be a critical factor in how much money you make. Hi, it's
Well, thank you for paying attention. Thank you for paying attention to that video, and I hope you enjoyed it. A mention here about the reference books that I have used to make my presentation: Event Management for Tourism, Cultural, Business and Sporting Events by Lynn van der Wagen, Event Management by R.K. Singh, and Event Management by Sita Ram Singh. I end this video by offering my sincere vote of thanks for your time and kind attention. And I do hope that you have now enlightened yourselves on dealing with vendors and suppliers who are an important part of your event and who make your event a grand success. As remember, event planning and management is teamwork and never a single unit. Thank you once again. Take care, have a great day, and stay safe.